Okay, well let's get started. 6:02. Like I said, I want to respect everybody's time. Everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Andrea asked me to do this because in years past, what's happened is we've asked folks to be delegates, and they show up to the House of Delegates. They really don't know what to expect. They don't know what the issues are. You know, they end up like the deer in the headlights, and they end up raising their yellow cards when everybody else raises the yellow cards, and it turns out not to be a very fulfilling experience. So we thought we'd just spend a few minutes and explain to you kind of how the whole process works, and then go over the issues that'll be debated at this week's House. So some of you may understand this, but like I said, it's a good refresher nonetheless. You know, the TDA has, you know, councils and committees. There's 4 main councils. There's several committees, and they meet during the year and try to come up with better ways to run our organization. If they come up with a good idea, they'll forward that on to the Board of Trustees. The Board of Trustees will debate it. If they think it's a good idea, then they'll pass it on to the House. Once it gets to the House, it first goes through the reference committee. And that's an open meeting, open to all members, where you can voice your opinion, your dissent. And the reference committee, that's five duly appointed members of the TDA, will then take the opinion of all the testimony that they've heard, and they come up with a recommendation based on that testimony that they will present to the House of Delegates. They may say they recommend adopting the resolution, or they don't recommend adopting the resolution. So that's kind of just the nuts and bolts of how the process works. And I don't know, Andrea, did everybody get a copy of the resolutions that will be before the board this week?
There was a link in the email, so anybody just needs to run to that email and click the link, and you can pull it right up on your computer.
Okay. Hopefully everybody had a chance to take a peek at it, but I'm just going to go through and explain the resolution and how it will affect, specifically the National Dental Society, because that's the district that we represent. So the first one is B&F 18-1, and that comes from the Budget and Finance Committee, 18 being 2018 and 1 being the first resolution that they proposed. And it basically is a request for a dues increase of $25. Now, you won't see this, most likely you won't see this when it gets to the House of Delegates, because it's likely to be pulled. And the reason it's going to be pulled is if you go to our bylaws, the bylaws for anything that has to do with dues is treated a little bit differently. Anything that has to do with a dues increase requires a 3/4 majority vote of the House of Delegates for it to pass. But bigger than that, it requires that the local districts are informed 30 days in advance. The delegates and alternate delegates are informed 30 days in advance, and the general membership is informed 30 days in advance. And this year, the local districts were informed, the alternates and delegates were informed, but notice wasn't sent out until 27 days before the meeting to the general membership. And I got a bunch of calls asking what we should do, and it's really a no-brainer. If you don't meet the requirements of the bylaws, you don't meet the requirements of the bylaws, and that resolution won't go forward. So at the meeting on Friday, we're likely to pull that, and it won't ever make it to the reference committee. So that's 18-1. 18-2 is the budget, and that's pretty straightforward. That's just the income and expenditures for the year. That's likely to be amended before it makes it to the House, but there's really no controversy or no issue there. BT1-18-1 is transfer of membership from one component to another component. And Andrea, it might be better if you just explain that one a little bit, because I think you've got a better handle on that than I do.
Well, I think what the intention here is, now that we're on Aptify, local, state, and the ADA, just that when they transfer a membership from one component to another in-state only, if I remember correctly, and I'll have the resolution right in front of me. It seems like it's about in-state only transfers. That the TDA staff will do that because it's all done on the computer now. It's not done from one secretary to another secretary of a local component. So I think they're just updating the wording of the bylaws to reflect what the process is now.
That's correct. Like I said, I think that with the new Aptify, which is kind of a standardized ADA software, more of the TDA handles a lot of the membership issues as opposed to the component societies. So I think that's pretty straightforward, and that's just a semantics, a wording issue. Next is BT1-18-2. Vice President term extended to 2 years. And basically, in the past, there's been 3 vice presidents on the Board of Trustees, one from West Tennessee, one from Middle Tennessee, and one from East Tennessee. And that's a 1-year term. And what everybody's kind of voiced their concerns when they've left that 1-year term was they're a little disappointed because it takes a while to get your feet wet and to have a good understanding of how the board runs. And it'd be nice to have a 2-year term so that they can actually be a little better and more active participant in it. So the board felt like that was a good decision. Again, hopefully the House of Delegates will feel the same. And the one thing that's not quite worked out yet is they would like it where everyone doesn't leave, all 3 vice presidents don't leave the same year. So there'll be a stagger of the different grand divisions, but that stagger hasn't been figured out because if it's approved this year, all 3 of those last year's vice presidents are due to rotate off. So that's yet to be addressed, but I think that's a positive change. The big one that's going to probably have a fair amount of debate on it is BT1-18-3. And that's to reduce the size of the House of Delegates. Currently, there's 104 members of the House of Delegates. And the way that the House is apportioned is there's 9 districts in the state of Tennessee, Nashville being the 5th district, and each district gets 1 member of the House of Delegates, 1 delegate, just based on their being a component district. And the other 95 of them are apportioned based on your membership. So currently, thanks to Andrea's great work, we have about 25% or maybe a little more than 25% of the state's dentists. So of the remaining 95, we would get 25% of those delegates. This resolution is to decrease that by half. So instead of 104, we would have 52. And the rationale for that is, well, Andrea can tell you one of the big rationales for it is we have a hard time getting 25 people or 26 people that are able to participate in the House of Delegates. You know, Andrea's gone through the delegates, the alternate delegates, and then put out a call to the general membership for volunteers, and we're still five delegates short of a full quorum or full delegation at this week's meeting. So it would help schedule meetings better. You know, when you have 104 people in the House, you have to find a certain size hotel, a certain size ballroom. You know, I think if we had a smaller house, people would be better engaged, and we'd have more people that are truly interested instead of just putting bodies in the seats of people that really don't have a passion for what we do. The downside to it is, as the biggest district in the Tennessee Dental Association, it would affect us the most because every district gets 1 delegate. A small district, by cutting the size in half, take, for instance, District 8 in Clarksville. They may have 70 dentists, 60 dentists. So they have 5% of the membership of the TDA. So normally they would get, say, 5 delegates plus the 1 delegate, so they get 6. Now they're going to get 3 plus the 1, which is 4. So they're going to have a greater percentage than they previously had. Nashville's one delegate is diluted by doing this. It's probably insignificant, but in the grand scheme of things, it probably affects us more than anybody else. Some of the, I don't know, old guard might be the best way to put it. They like the way things have run for years and years and years, and they're probably more apt to say, let's not fix a system that's not broken. So has anybody got any? That's one that, like I said, there will be some debate on. Hopefully it'll be debate that's worked out in the reference committee, and it's not debate that makes it to the House of Delegates floor, but that could happen as well.
Chip, this is Terrell. You had said earlier that the reference committees are open meetings. If anybody has a special interest in hearing the discussion about any of these resolutions that Chip has named, you can attend the reference committee meeting and you can participate in the discussion pro or con for the resolution or against the resolution and have your voice heard.
And in that, then they would be in the House of Delegates. Anybody else have any? Terrell, what's your opinion on that resolution?
I'm in favor of reducing the House. First of all, the House, in my opinion, has become just a formality and rubber stamp. I mean, we every once in a while have a resolution that comes forward that people have testimony and there's debate on. But the majority of the time, the reference committee has vetted it and makes a recommendation, and the majority of the time the House votes with the recommendation of the reference committee. But I think that trying to get 103 or 109 people in one room is difficult. It's difficult to fill the delegation. It's more difficult to move things forward. So I am definitely in favor of reducing the size of the House.
I would agree, and like I said, I think Andrea would appreciate it very much as well. Okay, next we have a waiver of dues and Board of Trustees approval, BT-18-1. And this is really, there was just some question. Well, one, when somebody suffers a financial hardship or a disability, and they really have a hard time paying their dues for a year, or if it's a permanent disability for the remainder of their career, they can apply to their local component. It's then forwarded on to the TDA and to the ADA for a waiver of dues. It can be a portion, 25, 50, 75%, or all of the dues. And each one of the tripartite needs to apply the same percentage reduction. There was our bylaws weren't quite the same as the ADA bylaws, and since it's a decision that's equally among all three, the local, the state, and national, we just made this resolution to make sure that everybody's on the same sheet of music. So there's not a whole lot different here, other than just making sure we're consistent with what the ADA is. The next one, BT 3-18-1, is merge the annual sessions committee into the Council on Scientific Programs and Continuing Education. And this one's a little controversial too. You know, the meeting is sponsored or administered by a different district each year. And this particular year, or this upcoming year, it will be the 6th district, which is Spring Hill, Columbia, Maury County down there. And they have a relatively small district. I don't know, 60 people or so. Is that about right, Terrell?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and they don't have a real active district. So when their district is responsible for administering the meeting, they fear that they're not going to have enough volunteers to make it a successful meeting. The other side of the coin is when it's going to be Nashville's in 2 years, nobody can say no to Terrell, and so we won't have any trouble, being able to put on a good meeting. So, the problem with this resolution is it puts the onus of running the meeting. There's still the annual session committee from the president and the president-elect, but it's kind of merged into the Council on Scientific Programs and Continuing Education. The good news is that's a council that has a 3-year term, so you'll have a little more continuity in being able to run a meeting. You'll know what was done in past years. The downside to it is if you've got a chairperson of that committee, you've got the president-elect's chairperson and the president's chairperson, is there too many chiefs and not enough Indians, to make a decision? So, like I said, this was a little controversial, and it may be going forward. Well, what's your opinion on that one, Carol?
I am absolutely opposed to this resolution, and I'll tell you why. We've taken 2 working committees, the CE committee and the annual session committee, and merged them into a mega committee. Now we have 9 representatives: the president-elect, the president's general chair, the president-elect's general chair, the chair of the council. Then we have sub-chairs that are on this mega annual session committee. And I just don't know. It's not spelled out. I just don't know who has the final authority. Does the president have the final authority to say what they want? Is it the council chair that has final authority? Or is it the general chair of the meeting? I think we've taken something that's worked and made it more complicated. And I personally do not feel like this resolution has been thought out. I don't think it's ready for prime time. And I hope that it gets sent back to the committee to do further work. It doesn't specify in the resolution who appoints the chairman of the council. It doesn't specify if the council chair appoints the subcommittee chairs, and it's very gray about whose responsibility lies where. And because of that, I'm not opposed to the concept of having an annual session mega committee. I'm opposed to the fact that this resolution does not define responsibilities, and I think it makes the situation worse. The smaller committees have always reached out for help from the larger committees and from the staff at the TDA, and they've always done fine. I feel like we've taken something that's worked and made it more complicated and actually made it more difficult to get things done, because now you've got to have a meeting of 9, 10, 11, 12, about 13 people, 15 people to come together to make decisions rather than a smaller committee of 4 or 5 people. So just scheduling a conference call, I just think it is not thought out well, and I am going to testify at the reference committee to send it back to committee for further work.
Oh, I think you're right, Terrell. A case in point is this year the 4th district is hosting the meeting, and Dr. Dykes didn't feel like he had enough volunteers from the 4th district, and he reached out to other folks in other districts who gladly helped out. So there's nothing that says that you can't get help from another district, and I think you're right, and it'd probably be a good time for us to come together as a district and say, we're not going to support this resolution unless somebody else has a different feeling. I think that's a good chance for us to flex our muscle and say, Nashville's not going to support this.
I also think at the House of Delegates, if this resolution comes to the floor and isn't killed at the reference committee, and it may not make it out of reference committee, but if it comes to the floor, then the members of the Nashville Dental Society who feel like they'd like to speak either for it or against it can get up to the microphone and give testimony. Another thing I object to, Chip, is the wording of the resolution says that basically complete control of the annual meeting will be by this council. And even though the president and president-elect and both general chairs sit on the council, the final decision, the way it's written, is that all decision-making will be made by the council. So if you have, say, a strong, opinionated president that might want things done a certain way, the president doesn't have that much input because the council chair, the way it's written, can usurp, what that particular president might want or that particular general chair might want. So I don't have the resolution in front of me, but the first line says something to the effect of the council shall. Do you have it in front of you, Chip?
Yeah. Now there's 3 resolutions that deal with this one topic. The council's duties develop and oversee all aspects of the annual business meeting and scientific session in conjunction with the president's component society and the TDA executive director.
So the annual session responsibilities will all be taken over by the council. So I think it'll be some interesting discussion at the reference committee.
Terrell?
Yes.
Terrell, Matt Gorham.
Hey, hey, Matt.
Hey, Terrell. And I can't believe we'd have a strong-willed president coming in. But the Council on Scientific Programs and Continuing Education shall have full charge of all details relating to the annual session and shall operate in accordance with the procedural manual adopted by the Board of Trustees, which we have no idea what that is.
I've never seen it.
This is just not fleshed out like it should be. I'm totally against it. That's my opinion.
Well, Matt, you've been general chair twice, haven't you?
Yep.
Well, you know better than anybody the difficulties and complications of having to try to manage a huge committee to come to consensus on anything. So you will represent us well.
Well, we'll see. But I just don't see how you could have people in East Tennessee calling people in Memphis to work on the sign committee. I mean, it's just, if you call, everybody in Nashville is going to do what you ask them to do. And I think most districts, whenever the president or the president of Nashville Dental Society or Memphis or whatever, whenever they ask, we'll do it. But I think people would be less inclined to volunteer if somebody they don't really know that much is asking them to do stuff. And I think it takes tons of, responsibility off of the president, which I don't think we should do. I think that's the highest honor. They should run the meeting like they want to run the meeting, in my opinion.
No, I think that's a good point. And like I said, I think, it's a good chance for us to go to the reference committee and state our opinion. Hopefully, maybe get this where it doesn't make it to the House of Delegates. But I think we're making an awful lot of changes for one district that is afraid they don't have enough volunteers to help them out, and it's the peril of harming all the other districts.
I agree.
Well, that resolution goes in conjunction with the next 2 resolutions. It's basically BT 3-18-2, the Council on Scientific Programs and Continuing Education, adds the president and the general chair, the president-elect and the general chair, to the membership of this council. And then BT 3-18-3 gives the president and the president-elect voting privileges on this council. So if the first one doesn't pass, the second and third one are moved.
Chip, I also want to add that when the resolution came before the board, they didn't even have the president or president-elect or either general chairman participating on the council. Those people were left completely off, and it was like a 12th hour decision to add the second 2 resolutions to include the president, their general chair, and the president-elect and their general chair.
Yeah, like I said, I think that we kind of rushed to put this through, because Paul was ready to take office, and maybe this should have been thought out, before that. Anybody else have any comments about that? Next is ND-18-1. It's a resolution that just facilitates, and this will be rewritten and presented a little bit differently at the reference committee. This was proposed by the new dentist committee, and they want to make it where dental students and graduate dental students have an easier path to ADA membership. And Andrea has a better handle on this as well. She noticed right away that it wasn't written that well. It was written by the new dentist chairman, and I think the board just assumed that, it was written properly, but she pointed out a couple errors, and Beth has still since corrected it. Beth Randall, who's a new dentist person, and it's going to be corrected at the reference committee. But I think it's a, I don't know that it does a whole lot, but anything that it allows a little easier transition for students to join the ADA, the TDA, I think it's a step in the right direction. Do you have any comments on that, Andrea?
No, like you said, I think that they've addressed most of the issues, and they're going to bring them up in the reference committee and get it corrected. It just was, I just don't think it was not an understanding of what the current wording was actually trying to do when they were trying to open it up more, but it was actually going to open it up to graduate students and dental school students who are inside the state of Tennessee. But we actually have some graduate students who leave the state of Tennessee, go into a residency somewhere else, but want to stay a member because they know they're coming back here. They don't want to be an ADA direct member only. They want to come back to Tennessee, and they want to keep a Tennessee membership too. So we just wanted to make sure they could do that.
Okay. Anybody else have any, like I said, in going forward, it'd be nice if we could actually meet, whether it's at the TDA headquarters a month beforehand, and sit down and kind of hash these things out. This was a nice way to do this at the last minute. Or we've also thought about maybe having a little pre-caucus at the meeting before the House of Delegates meeting. So anybody's opinion as to what would they feel like would be the best way to do that, we're certainly open to any suggestions. But this was, I think, just a good way for everybody to know what the issues are, to give everybody a chance to go to reference committee, see how that works.